everyone doing tonight? Good, yes. We're going to do a quick poll really quick. We're going to see, let's see a show of hands of how many entrepreneurs are in the room. All right. How many corporates? Okay. And how many people potentially in the education or university or nutrition sector? Okay, great. Without further ado, first of all, I want to say thank you very much for coming this evening. And again, I think it's great that Mitte decided to do something like this for the community, and hopefully they continue to do panels such as this for the community. I could easily actually introduce everyone, but I think it's better for them to introduce themselves. So we'll start actually here with Julian. And Julian, tell us a little bit about yourself, about your company, and why sustainability and food matters to you.
Hello, good evening everybody. I'm Julian, I'm the founder of Kaffeeform. Kaffeeform is based here in Berlin. I started the company about 3 years ago, and we look on food waste on a different angle. We see a second value in bypass products, and we in particular are looking on coffee grounds. And our mission is to recycle coffee grounds, dry them and turn it with just natural ingredients into a new alternative material. And nowadays we tackle the problem of disposable coffee cups, or creating reusable coffee cups from coffee waste.
My name is Christophe Maire. I'm a tech entrepreneur. I did digital maps, digital books. A few years ago I created Attendees Labs to back other startups, and 3 years ago I came to start Food Labs, which is an incubator and a platform between industry and startup, focusing on food and health and food and sustainability.
Well, before I'm gonna introduce myself, I just want to say thanks again to Jewell for moderating. Much appreciated. Thanks for coming. So I'm Moritz. I'm one of the co-founders of Mitte, and I guess in essence what I care about is food and sustainability, and that's what I always cared about. So I started my first company that I was involved in is a company called Coffee Circle, some of you might know, and then worked more on the supply chain side of things in East Africa before starting Mitte, combining kind of all of those interests, and yeah, I'm very much looking forward to be talking about this intersection.
Hi, my name is Nadja. I'm co-founder of the Sustainable Food Academy. We are a Berlin-based consultancy agency, and what we actually do is we consult businesses in the food industry to be more sustainable. And we specifically focus on employees in the food industry, because a lot of them do not understand or have, a grip of the concept of sustainability. So we actually take them into the fields. We take them to farmers, we take them to startups, we take them on trend expeditions. We do a lot of innovative workshops with them, with design thinking and human-centered design, and we work with a lot of experts in Berlin from different backgrounds to, make people in the food industry get a better understanding of why it's important to be sustainable in the next years.
Thank you. So, and I'm Jewell Sparks. I'm the CEO of BitHouse Group and also the Food and Food Tech Platform founder for the Dutch Startup Association. But Nadja, I wanted to ask you, you've been really involved, obviously, in the sustainable food space, and you started the Sustainable Food Academy. What motivated you to do that? And what are some of the outcomes that you've been able to basically show the people who are involved? Like, what are some of your tangible the tangible benefits of being part of the academy and what you're trying to achieve there?
Well, my motivation to work with sustainability in food started about 20 years ago, because I have actually a very big background in gastronomy and fine dining, the hospitality sector. And what always got me is that I was being placed in a restaurant, and then the owner of the restaurant would come and put the wine in front of me and tell me, okay, Nadja, so here's your wine. It's a great wine. It's a biologically grown, whatever, from a specific vineyard. But they never actually taught me anything about the product, and I never got to try the product. So So they would sell me to sell the wine. They would tell me sell the wine, but I didn't know how to tell the story of the product. It wasn't until I actually started working in the United States in a farm-to-table restaurant that I understand how powerful of a tool it is as an employee to understand the sustainability strategy of your own company. If you know the story behind your product, if you can tell where the cheese comes from, where the meat comes from, where the wine was grown, if you can tell the farmer's name and relate to whatever they've been going through to get where they are, you can sell anything, and it's not difficult to sell a bottle of wine for 100 euros if you actually know the story about the product. And this is where my passion started. So I started out working in the gastronomy and fine dining sector, and then I studied food anthropology in the United States, which you can't study it here yet, but I hope it's going to come soon. And then from there on, I started a career for nonprofit organizations as a sustainability expert, and also I worked a lot with food waste. And that was basically the second step. Then after having all of this experience in gastronomy, I realized that in order for people to understand what sustainability means and how important it is for the future, I mean, it's not something we can talk about today after, we had the climate report published last week. I think it should be pretty clear that we need to start acting, everybody needs to start acting, and food industry needs to start acting. And I realized working in the food sector, the most powerful tool to get to people about all these topics we talk about every day in our little sustainability bubble is to actually make it, accessible in a sense of actually taking them to the fields, making them understand. So I invented a thing that's called Schnippel Disco. It's very funny. There was a big challenge in 2011. We had a big pile of food waste that was vegetable that weren't conformed, they couldn't be sold in the supermarket. And they told me, Nadja, we want to feed a demonstration, like 6,000 people with this food, but we don't know, how do we get people involved in actually cutting the veggies? So I thought, maybe I need to combine my two. I had a big love for techno and clubbing music, and I thought maybe if I invite a DJ, I can get 400 people to cut these veggies with me in one night. And everybody told me, you're crazy, that's totally insane. I'm like, no, I'm gonna call it Schnippel Disco and it's gonna work. And it worked. Like, we mobilized people for 1 week over Facebook, and we had literally 400 people there cutting veggies for 4 hours and scrubbing potatoes. And I had so many. The thing went viral. I mean, they did it in 29 countries after that. I had no idea what I started there. And I had so many people coming in these events to me telling me, Nadja, you're the first person that made clear to me how important that is that we reduce food waste, because I see and I feel and I live, what you do and preach every day, and I can see the products, and that's how I want to get involved. And that's what we do with the Sustainable Food Academy now. That was a long story, sorry.
That's okay, thank you for sharing. And speaking of products, Moritz, tell us a little bit about your products. You've created a great hardware solution that's focused on water and sustainability. So tell us a little bit about the passion behind why you're involved with the company, why you've started the company, and the impact that you plan on having on the environment and sustainability.
Yeah, I think if you really think kind of a bit further in the future, in any solution that you are putting forward, and that's more of a meta theme first, is you have to integrate sustainability, and it's not a nice to have or something that you add on as a marketing story. It even will protect your business interest, because we are, as humanity, basically facing massive problems that we are basically living on credit at the moment, right? We're living on credit on air, on water, and on land as well. So in all key dimensions, we're living on credit, and we have to think, how do we create solutions that, and I think science needs to be the key to it, and technology needs to be the key to it, or none thereof. There's two options, but most likely, knowing humans, it needs to be technology. So basically that's the meta theme. I think we need to have sustainability integrated in everything we do. We start today. There's not even a question if, it's just a question how. And now specifically about our product, it's tackling the most fundamental kind of element of life, which is water next to air, I guess. And what we did is we kind of we asked ourselves the question of how can you create, looking at the space, we have fundamental problems. We're facing very unstable tap water in 85% of the world, and we face, and Germans always have a big patriotism about their tap water. But what's interesting is that, and that's very unknown, we're facing massive microplastic crisis, and that's global. That's also in Germany. We're facing the same thing with hormones, with medical residues, and unfortunately we don't live in a world where tap water or water quality is getting better. It's getting worse everywhere, and it's in 85% of the world it's not usable. So that's one problem area. The next problem area is bottles. Well, they're actually not they're an invention of 1968. That's when plastic bottles were invented, and I don't think in 50 years they will be there, because they're very unsustainable, obviously, solution, but they're also very expensive, very inefficient way of distributing. Basically touches 19 touch points before it reaches you. It's not a very smart, it's 20th century or maybe even before. So basically it's not a very smart way of distributing, of providing hydration. Sorry, the guys from Coca-Cola in the audience. Thirdly, we have purifiers that kind of looked at how can I purify water, and we look at how can I make water clean, but it doesn't look at how do I make water healthy. So we have all these problem areas, and there has not been major innovation in the last 50 years in creating an interesting solution. That's what we try to do and I don't want to do a kind of talk too much about product. You can check it out online, but that's what we're doing. Providing sustainable and human-centric hydration solutions that are best for humans and the planet.
It's a beautiful product, by the way. Christophe, I've heard amazing things about Atlantic Food Labs. Actually, a lot of the food founders in the Food and Food Tech platform, they've had various touch points with Atlantic Food Labs. And as one of the, I'd say, main local investors in the future of food and products, why sustainability in food? Why do you think you invest in that, and what's really the potential there?
Well, I came to food through health. I'm a quite active investor in digital health, and clearly food is one of the biggest impact one can have on one's health. Now, sustainability is interesting because sometimes people see it as an idealistic idea, and I personally believe that sustainability is a major business driver, and I believe that the next big companies coming out of Europe will have a sustainability DNA, and I invest in that space in the hope of creating large company of the future. So for me, sustainability is neither a future, but it is more a consequence of looking at very hard problem to solve. I'm a big believer in entrepreneurship, in startup as a vehicle to solve some of the largest problems of humanity, and so automatically you land on the big issues: meat, sugar, water, and this is a lot of the things that we work on.
And I think the great thing is that we're here in Germany. I don't know how many of you guys have seen the latest HSI index, or the sustainable index, looking at the different, the 17 sustainable development goals. But Germany is like number 3 as it relates to the food sustainable index. So I think we're at a really good place. And with that being said, though, Christophe, what are some trends that you are seeing specifically in food sustainability space, and how also do you make a decision to basically invest in those areas? Because I think we had some entrepreneurs in the audience, and probably some people are working on sustainable food products, and I think people are also really interested to hear, what do you think could be a good fit of the future? How do you make that determination as it comes to the investment piece?
So the problem are relatively easy to identify, the solution less so. There's clearly there's a big issue and opportunity in the area of clean meat. You know, we cannot go on eating meat. So where we are, the whole side costs, externalities of us eating so much meat is unsustainable. And there are multiple solutions to that. You know, there's lab-grown meat, and we have a very exciting startup working on producing super healthy protein and fiber out of the circular economy and an intelligent way to work with mushrooms. We're working on dairy replacement. So that's clearly one big, very obvious area. I think there is also another big area for us, which is personalized nutrition.
Yes.
So we're starting to learn more and more about impact of food on health, and also about the fact that, you know, different things, different nutrition program would fit different people and across different age development. So that's also a very interesting area. Generally, the filter, and that's a little bit the difficulty. The filter before getting engaged in a project is for us how do you know, not only produce a product, but also a go-to-market, a business model that will scale and that has a chance to become a large, successful company.
And Julian, last but not least, I think what you're doing is absolutely great. You're looking at the circular economy and things. How did you come up with that idea, and how's it going, actually?
Yeah, I started about 9 years already ago to look at coffee from a different perspective. I was studying product design in Italy, and we had way too much coffee all the time. And I was thinking sometimes, where does all that coffee go to? How much is it actually at one single coffee shop? And it was a really large pile. And at that time I realized, wow, there's a coffee shop each corner, and there must be like there's millions of kilos of coffee out there, and what happens to that? And is there also a way to fertilize and use it different? And then I did just by scratch loads of experiments for some time. There was no guideline how and what would be the right steps. So from 50 experiments, 48 would fail. And I still continued for a long time. And yeah, then I met during the way bioscientists, lots of people from different industries that certain little like bits in the puzzle which helps us further to develop that material. And it all happened very much on scratch. There was no external funding, there was no company really believing in that. It was just like a personal wish to showcase everybody it is possible. Yeah, and then in 2015 the material was fully developed, and we started with a small espresso cup, and that evolved in further products, and now it's like 4 products circulating. There's like a local group here in Berlin helping us to collect the coffee. It's cyclists, they run around the area, they bring it back to a sheltered workshop in Kreuzberg where we dry it, and then we process it further into a new material. And it goes back ideally to the same coffee shops and people getting into it. And it's also about motivating people, not saying, oh, you should stop doing this and you're bad with that environment. But you can use the product, you can enjoy your coffee, and your next coffee will eventually be your next cup. So this was kind of the idea how to build up a circular economy.
Speaking of communities, and this is to everyone on the panel, how much do you guys think like consumer needs or consumer concerns is playing a role into the type of food and products and beverages that are being brought to the market now?
I think this is very interesting because on one hand, at the time, large companies are waking up to the requirement of being sustainable, and that's really push. But at the same time, that's probably a much bigger factor. You have a consumer awareness and a consumer pull and a willingness to experiment with new ways of consumption. And that is probably what is making the difference, and why probably in the next 10-15 years you will see an acceleration of innovation and new ideas coming that probably were not possible 15 years ago.
So I think one big, and I think you already mentioned it, one big thing is I think as humans we are not wired for less, unfortunately. We are usually wired for more. So I think the idea of saying you shouldn't have this and you shouldn't have that, and why are you doing this and you're bad, usually doesn't work. So I think it's more about rethinking models to basically maybe a little bit less, but we're not going to prevent people from, for example, Chinese people from starting to drive cars or eat meat. Right? It's going to be very, very difficult. So I think it's better in looking in replacement models and, let's say, electric vehicles or different types of meat, rather than saying, oh, that's not going to work. So I think that's one important thing. And then I think if you look at food and health as a segment, those segments are actually quite sustainable already. If you look at furniture, not so much. Or if you look at electronic goods, almost not at all. So I think it is because it has something to do with our bodies, and we understand that there must be, I think the human mind works connecting nature and sustainability in a, that's something that we can understand, and we know that that you don't want pesticides or GMO type food. So I think that's something very easily understandable. So that's why I think food especially is at the forefront of sustainability. And now if you look, the next levels are those labels, organic, fair trade, whatever. No one really understands what they are.
And there's so many of them.
And there's so many of them. So I think there's still a long way to go, and there's not a one size fits all. There's some of your stories of making it tangible and understandable, but there's not one solution as well. I think that needs to be clear. But it is becoming a major drive. It is becoming a core component of decision making, especially in food.
Anybody else? Okay, and let's talk a little bit about the regulatory climate. I mean, this is something in terms of bringing new food and beverage products to market. I mean, I think each region has its own, regulatory issues. For example, Copenhagen, they just passed a law where like food in the future has to basically have a label that basically implies its impact on the climate. So there's all these different areas. Germany is different in terms of getting your products probably to market. So how's that affected basically your progress and development of bringing the different products that you want to bring to market? Have you had any issues in that area?
I can tell you a very story, but so we were very excited about our coffee cups based on coffee residues, and we presented them on a few markets and people loved them, and they were saying, oh, these are great, and they have a coffee scent and fantastic, it reminds us of the story. And at some point an envelope, very official, arrived at our office and sending in, your coffee cups exceed the sensory parts of a food containing product, and they smell like coffee, so you should do something against that. So we were like, oh, what the hell, well, we're introducing a new material and now our coffee cups should be like less sensory on coffee. So then at that point we had to look on, and now we offer a pre-washing for everybody if they have less coffee scent on the cups. But this is really something weird. We're experimenting with it, but yeah.
And what about you, Nadja? I mean, what do you think and what have you seen? Because you have this academy, and so I'm sure, you're pretty sure you're working really close, obviously, potentially with food regulatory issues and things like that, or helping with assessments, consulting services or something, or no?
We don't directly work with them, so what we do though is we travel quite a bit. We do a lot of trend scouting. We've been to the United States last year, and it came to my attention, and it's coming to my attention over and over again, is so many great startup entrepreneurs are working on topics like insects, for example, and the regulatory system about insects in Europe is very not understandable for anybody. I mean, you can read that stuff and still don't know what's going on. And so that's really something that makes me very passionate, where I'm happy to share ideas. I want to start a platform because Not only, and I agree with you, I think startup companies are going to be the next food economy by bringing out better products. But we need to not forget there's an entire society of people out there that we need to take with us. And so we need to get straight laws. And we need to do a lot of like public campaigning, because with insect, that's always such a beautiful topic. It's going to take probably 10 to 15 years until something like an insect is culturally accepted in Germany. And I think we need, this is not me saying that, that's just studies of psychology and cultural acceptance of food, new food. Think about sushi. Sushi came in the 80s to Germany, and Germans hated raw fish back in that day. And it's only until today, I have always a very good monitor. I come from the countryside, and when I go with my mom to the supermarket there, and they opened a sushi counter a year ago, I know, okay, the trend is there and people culturally accept it. So yeah, I think it's a big issue. A lot of companies are working with that. Also with a lot of sustainable food, there's a lot of regulatory things with hygiene and stuff. So yeah.